Hi, so this is what I submitted to the 2023 Desmos art competition. It's what's known as a Wankel rotary engine, and I was able to get it to animate, which I was actually very proud of. This is all based on a project that I did actually in a high school calculus class, where I learned about these different geometries and kind of put it all together in what I thought was a pretty interesting way. So I wanted to make a video where I kind of explained these shapes in more depth, and because I think it was interesting, and the way that I got it to animate was fun. So also apologies for my voice right now. I'm recovering from a bit of a cold. So the Wankel engine, I'm not going to get into how it functions too much, but it's made up of a few components. So this first one is the drive shaft. So this smaller circle is the main portion of the drive shaft, and then this larger circle is the eccentric portion of the drive shaft, and this interfaces directly with the piston. And as we animate the graph, you can see that this outer circle kind of moves along the edge of the inner circle, and that's just to kind of give it the illusion of the drive shaft spinning. And so we're able to do that with these variables x sub c and y sub c. And so if we go down here, we can see how those change. So we can see that x sub c is a cosine of theta 1. Theta 1 is what we change, it's like the time variable. And then we scale it by the difference between the radius of the outer circle and the inner circle. So in this case, that's 1. We scale it by 1, and then y sub c is a sine of the theta. So then moving on, the next equation that we have is for the piston. I've seen that some people say that the piston of a Wankel engine is a rouleau triangle. I don't think that's true. I've seen sources that say it's something different. What I used is an ellipse. This doesn't really look like an ellipse because this is a certain type of ellipse that has 3 focuses or foci. And so you can see in the equation that it uses 3 points. And the way that it works is those 3 points make up an equilateral triangle, which just so happens to fit perfectly within this very outer shape, which I'll talk more about later. And as that equilateral triangle moves, it still fits within that shape, which is great. But then, as you know, an ellipse, every single point on the edge of the ellipse, if you were to take its distance from each of the foci and add that up, it would give you a number, and that number is the same for all points on the ellipse. And so that's the case with this ellipse, which is an ellipse that has 3 points. And so that number is 2 times the side length of the triangle. And so that is so that these corners are sharp. So if there's a point on the ellipse here, which there is, if we were to take its distance from the focus here, then that's 0. If we were to take its distance here, that's the side length of the triangle. And if we were to take its distance to this one, that's another side length of the triangle. So those sum up to 2 times the side length of the triangle. And so that's simple enough, and we're able to animate that given x sub 4, y sub 4, and x sub 5 and x sub 6 and so on. And I'll talk more about those later. And also x sub c, because this moves in relation to this circle, which is the eccentric portion of the drive shaft, which interfaces with the piston. And then this shape is what I called the engine housing, and this is a type of epitrochoid. An epitrochoid is made by getting a circle like this, or really any curve. In this case, it's a circle, and then you put a circle along its edge. This one. This point represents its center, and then you choose a point in that circle, on the outer circle, and you choose some variable that is the distance between the center and the point. And then as you roll this outer circle along the inner circle, you trace this point. And so right now it's right here, and as we roll it, it goes along. And so the ratio between the radius of the inner circle and outer circle determines the general shape, and then the distance between the center is also another important variable. In this case, the ratio between the two radii is 2, and so that means that there are two kind of chambers in this shape. And then in this case, d, which is the distance from the center of this tracing point, is equal to 1. And that's just so that it fulfills these very specific requirements, so that it fits an equilateral triangle perfectly within it. So first, x1, y1, x2, y2, and x3, y3, these are all points of an equilateral triangle. And then x4 through 6 and y4 through 6 are those points rotating in relation to another variable that I made, which is theta sub 2. And theta sub 2 is actually a function of theta sub 1. We scale it by 3 and we offset it by 90 degrees. That's just because the piston makes a full rotation with 3 rotations of the drive shaft, I believe. And so we have to scale it down in that way. So we do that. And then to define the ellipse, remember we used x's 4 through 6 and y's 5 through 6, and then we also offset it by y sub c and x sub c, and so that's to make it move up and down and a little to the left and right as well, as that kind of outer drive shaft circle also spins. And then R1 and R2, those are the radii of the drive shaft circles, and those have to be that certain ratio between them. It has to be a ratio of 3 to 2. That's just one of those interesting quirks about the Wankel engine. There have to be these certain ratios. So here we go, x sub c and y sub c, we already did that. I made the side length of the triangle 4 times r sub 2, and I think that also has to be the case. R, now this is the radius of the larger circle, which defines the epitrochoid, and so this is a function of x sub max, and these different variables. So c is the number of chambers in this case, so if we were to turn this up to 3, we can see that we get 3 chambers, but it doesn't really work that way. And then d, as we can see, is the distance from the center of the inner circle. And I'll talk more about x sub max in a second. And then, as we can see, r sub o is the radius of the outer circle, and we can see that it's just this outer radius, it's this inner radius scaled down by the number of chambers, which has to be 2. So here we go. X sub max is actually, I believe it's this point right here. Let me actually see that. So here we go. Yeah, x sub max is equal to it's equal to this point right here, and so I was able to use this to define the epitrochoid by essentially kind of working backwards. So I used some of the properties of the equilateral triangle to derive that, and that's it. So I'm sorry if this was a bit complex or convoluted. I didn't script this video at all, and I think it shows, but that's fine. So yeah, I think this was an interesting project that I worked on a while ago, and it was fun to kind of revisit this. Sometimes I make stuff in Desmos and I forget how it works the next day, so it's fun to kind of revisit this and work out how it works. And I hope you think it's interesting, and I hope you go to this graph and play around with it because it's cool. So thank you.